know Reverend Kate Stewart, she's been a minister for many, many years, and she was taught by Reverend Andrea and Reverend James. And so we are so privileged, and she's a wonderful speaker. She's had her own ministry in Nevada for several years, and then she moved back to our community, and she's been here with us, and she offers her heart to you this morning on desire, opinion, and revelation. And just sit back and enjoy the wisdom of this powerful woman. Reverend Kate?
Good morning. Boy, it's such a delight to see everyone here. It's been quite some time since I've spoken. As you can see, or maybe you can't see, I've had an operation. And so I've been kind of out of things, and I wasn't quite sure how it would affect my speaking, because it was deep brain stimulation, which means that they put a wire from here clear down into here on both sides, and then I have a battery here which I get to program. So I'm cyborg now. But today I'd like to bring you a new spiritual practice if you haven't been doing it. And I can just hear in your minds you going, another spiritual practice? Aren't I doing enough? But this one is very simple, and this is one that you can do any place, any time, and it will give you instant feedback, and it'll give you guidance right off the bat. And you don't have to go into a quiet place or anything. You can do this, like I said, any place, any time. And Ernest Holmes, in that quote, alluded to it. He said, we must analyze ourselves. Analyze ourselves. Now, I'm going to give you 3 areas that you can analyze yourself in to give examples. And the areas are, now that I've forgotten them, are desire, opinion, and revelation. And they might seem kind of disconnected, but they're not really. So let's start with desires. We all have desires, and desires are wonderful because desires bring up, to me, they're from God. When you have a desire, it is telling you you can be, do, or have more than you are at the present moment. So they're made to stretch you some. Now, there's 2 areas that desires kind of come from. And the first area is spirit desires, which do that expansiveness. It allows you to grow more. And then the other area might be what you might call human desires. For instance, the new car. And you might be thinking, well, I want a new car because this one's dented. Or I want a new car because I got to keep up with the neighbors. That's more the human inspiration. When it comes to spirit, we're going to go into what is called mental equivalence. So what would that new car give you emotionally? What would the new car feel like? Would it be a sense of freedom, being able to get out and move around wherever you want? Or is it a sense of companionship, being able to take people with you comfortably? Or maybe it's a sense of safety and security that it invites. Now, when it comes from spirit, you'll notice that those ideas that are all expansive. You get those ideas, and they're what I call life-giving. They expand life. They give life to us. They allow us to take that idea and not just get the object of what we're talking about, but to change our whole lives. So if you want more freedom, and you get that car so you can have more freedom, guess what? You're going to start seeing more freedom in other areas of your life too, when that is what you're focused on. You might have more freedom in your work experience. You might have more freedom in your home. You might have more freedom with activities like travel and enjoying life. It doesn't stop. It's not limited. And I read once in this one place, actually it came from the book. I don't know, has anybody heard of the book? It's a spiritual story, and it's called The Book, and that's the whole title of it. And what they said is our goal is to bring the infinite into the finite. So what our goal is with the mental equivalence is to bring the infinite spirit into the finite, into our personal lives, into the lives of everyone else, so that we can expand and grow and have means of doing that. Now, what's really interesting is when you look at this for self-analysis, you can ask yourself, is this life-giving or is it life-taking in this instant? Does the desire allow me to give more into my life, like freedom? And not only that, but is it expansive? Does it go every place? Does it move every place in my life? Is it inclusive? Does it involve other people and things, opinions, ideas? Or, coming from the humanistic side, is it life-taking? In other words, and I don't mean that by having the new car you're going to be taking life, but life-taking in that it doesn't add anything to society. It doesn't add anything to your life other than that object to move around in. Also, it tends to be limited somehow, finite. You get that new car and you find that it creates this black hole. Is it just trying to fill that one little hole? In other words, you buy a new car, and 6 months later, do you want another new car? Just for the car's sake? Or do you want to keep up with your neighbors? Or do you want to have a new car because some new colors came out, or just you want something different, more, better, different? We've heard that before, more, better, different. How much can we get that? Now, also, I find that it tends to be exclusive. It tends to, when it's coming from the humanistic side, tends to be exclusive in that it's for me. Or maybe it's for my immediate family, but it's not for everybody. Now, when you're thinking about freedom with a car, for instance, that freedom can apply to anybody. It's expansive, it's giving, it's inclusive, where exclusive means I got a new car for my house and my family, and that's it. It tends to stop right there. So what's really great about this spiritual practice is we get to take anything we can experience, any object, any desire that we experience, and we can bring it into the spirit. We can bring it into spirit by finding that mental equivalence, by finding what it will give us. And if you're not real sure what mental equivalence is, take classes. The classes will help you really learn to define this and find it easily. And sometimes in our classes we even go, well, here's a pencil. What's the mental equivalent of a pencil? Or the mental equivalence of a pencil sharpener? Or anything else. Everything has a mental equivalence. That's how we bring the infinite into the finite, by making these choices, by seeing how we can do this. So desires are always good. Whatever desire you have, sometimes they come out of a need, sometimes they come out of just a want, but they are always have that ability to use them to expand, to grow, to change. And that's what we want, isn't it? Everybody in this room is here to change. Hopefully. Yes? No? Do you want change? Yes. Because it's through change that we grow. Also, this allows you to be more open to other people. And now we get into opinions. I want to tell you about opinions. You have opinions that come from parents, which a lot of us just simply carry forth the opinions my parents had. My parents were Republican, so I'm Republican. Or my parents went to a Catholic church, so I go to a Catholic church. Or, 1,001 other opinions on how to do things. Come from, quite often, parents, and we get them when we're very young, and we just grow up with them. Also, we gain opinions when we go to school, through our textbooks, through what the teachers teach us, through our neighbors and our friends. And in this case, you might want to ask, is this my opinion, really, or is it somebody else's opinion? And that's a really good question, especially when you're dealing with children. Is this my opinion, or am I hearing my mother or father speak through my mouth and give their opinion? I've had to really deal with that. I had some very adventuresome children, to say the least. And I can remember when one of them came home and said, "Mom, I'm having sex," at 16 years old. And I told her, I had told them they could always say anything to me, just give me 24 hours to calm down. Because I might blow up at first. And so I found that I had to really ask myself, now, is this anger I'm feeling from my parents, from their attitudes, or is this really what I think? And I had to really think about that and then move forward from that. This child was very responsible. She was being very careful. And so I had to look at that and say, well, yes, this time has come that she can handle this. Now, one of my other children, I would have said, no way. But for her, and I'm certainly not advocating any child has sex at 16, but once it happens, what do you do? The same child was the one who developed an opinion through experience. And sometimes that's how we get our opinions, is through experience. She was 2 years old, and we were in a doctor's office because we were going to Germany. And the military insisted that you get typhoid and you get this shot and that shot. And I mostly remember the typhoid because it's an oil and it stays in your arm for a long time and hurts. But we were sitting in the doctor's office, and she goes up to this guy with a mustache and says, "All guys with mustache smoke." And I'm going, whoa, where did she get that? And she got it because in her limited experience, she associated the two. She somehow associated. Now remember, she was 2 years old. She was 2. And we tend to think of opinions as being of people a little bit older than that. But even at 2, she was developing these opinions. And she did it. She connected what she thought was 2 very logical points. How often have we done that at one time or another? There's a story that I was reminded about about the 7 blind men that went to this glade, and they went and there was an elephant in the middle of the glade, and one felt the trunk and said, "Oh, this is a snake," and another one felt a leg and said, "This is a tree. No, this is a tree," and another one felt the side and said, "This is the wall. You're all wrong. This is a wall." And the last one said, "No, thought the tail was a rope." And they argued over who was right. Well, they were each right, but they were each seeing it from a very limited viewpoint. When you are so in place, so hardly put with your opinion, you close yourself off. You become like those blind people, and they can't see Excuse me, can't see the big picture. Am I still on? Yes. Okay. We had trouble last service, so I wanted to make sure, not just me. But anyway, we become blinded. Am I okay? Okay, we become blinded and we can't see any other idea. Now, there's a lot of opinions out there, and some opinions might even be better than the ones that you're holding. You might even get to a point where you want to let go of some of your opinions because they aren't bringing you what you want. They're taking away from what you want and who you are. You might have an opinion that most people don't like you, and so you start holding yourself in and you don't go places and you don't do things. That's life-taking. That's limiting. What is the truth? The truth is bringing that infinite into the expression and saying, well, maybe there's a different way of looking at this. Now, we had a very terrible event that happened this last week with the shootings down in Florida with the children. And this is something that I thought about. We have an ability, most of us make an opinion about that. Most of us would say the children were victims. This person came in and shot these children, these poor victims. And we look at the kids and the schools and everything, and we look at ourselves and say, oh, could I be a victim of that situation? And we become scared. And that closes down our opinions, closes down our ideas. Now, what if we took this and looked at it a different way? And you might ask yourself, well, how in the world could you look at that a different way after all? But spiritually, we know that sometimes we're attracted to different places, just as you have all been drawn here. You're attracted to different things. Sometimes we are attracted to a situation because it needs to be changed. Something needs to happen. And we certainly know that needs to happen with all these school killings and that something needs to change. And so, if you think about it spiritually, these children have come to the school. They were practicing in case something like this came up. Someone had an idea that this could possibly happen. And so they were drawn together. And personally, I like to look at those kids as heroes instead of victims. Isn't that nicer? Thinking of the kids as heroes. There are heroes. They came together to let the United States know that we need to change something. We need to change our attitudes. Same thing happened in September 11th, when the New York towers came down, the trade towers came down. All those people, we could look at them and say, oh, they're such victims of that situation. Or we could call them heroes because the world changed. The world changed after that experience, did it not? And I prefer to think of people more in that light than as victims, because victims implies that there was nothing anybody could do about anything. A Bigfoot could come and smash you down right now, and not a thing you could do about it. And I don't want to think of myself that way. I don't want to think of myself as a victim. So where does the spiritual practice comes in? The spiritual practice allows us to stay open and maybe change our perception about things. Change to expand. Now, the last area is revelation. And at first I looked at that and I thought, how in the world does revelation work into this? Well, if you've ever heard of a cult, you'll know how revelation works in. Because many of the cult leaders have had fantastic revelations. God told them to do whatever it was, or they've said gather people and maybe give them lemonade. And we know that that isn't life-giving. That isn't spirit expanding. That's spirit contracting. That's spirit contracting. And if you look at Revelations, Revelations always has a story to it. Always has a story that blends with it. So often they'll get a revelation, an aha moment, and that aha moment might be very wonderful. But at the same time, they try to make it more wonderful, make it a little different. The ego creeps in and says, oh, this is why you should do it, or that is why. And people misunderstand what part is ego and what part is actual revelation. Now, I tell you, by using this spiritual practice of self-analysis, you'll never be caught up in the wrong side of this. Because you can ask yourself, well, is this life expanding? Or is this life minimizing? Is this inclusive or is this exclusive? Is this idea expansive or contracting? So you have these different questions you can ask yourself. That is part of the analysis. And in asking these questions, you're guided along the road that you want to go on. It becomes easier. Ask yourself a lot of questions and be willing to answer them truthfully. And you can do this journaling, but you can certainly do this in the grocery line just as well. You can stand there in the grocery line and look at your cart and go, well, is this going to help my life, or is this going to make it worse? Is that chocolate cake really what I want? And maybe there's times that you say, yes, that chocolate cake is definitely what I want. And other times that you might say, I'm not sure that it's so good for me. Maybe I should put it back. So we can use this analysis, this way of working with things over and over and over again in every situation we're in. So it's a handy spiritual practice because you can use it. I would, in conclusion, you have choice. And by asking these questions, it gives you the ability to act on those choices. It gives you guidance into where you should go. And I would like to leave you with a word from Ernest Holmes, also from the same book that we had the quote out before. It says, our subconscious reactions will coerce us unless we control them, will cause us to believe all kinds of fantastic things unless reason sits in judgment. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to just go along and hope for the best, or are you going to start analyzing your actions and reactions? Analyzing your opinions so that you can be more open to other opinions. Analyzing your desires so that you aren't pulled this way and pulled that way, but have clear-cut idea of where you're going and what you want to do. So if you'll please join me, we'll do a spiritual mind treatment so that this can be pulled into the heart and understood. So there is only spirit that surrounds us, spirit that is in each person here as a vibrant, alive expression, spirit that is always ready to guide you, always ready to support you, always ready to love you. And I know right now, for myself and for each person here, that we have this intelligence, this connection to spirit, so that we know which direction to go. We can see easily whatever it is, whether it is expanding or declining. We can easily see whether something is inclusive or exclusive. We can easily make these choices that allow us to grow spiritually Allow us to grow in community. Allow us to grow as a person. There is nothing that will hold us down. Nothing that can hold us back. For Spirit is right there, nudging us forward with our desires, opening us up with new opinions and ideas, allowing us to have revelations that stay the pure revelations, allowing us to see the truth within and outside of us. For I know that I have the strength and the power of Spirit. I have the peace and the joy of Spirit growing within me right this moment, and it cannot be taken away unless I choose to let go of it. And I do not choose to let go of it. I choose to share it, to grow it, to be it. And so as I release this treatment into the law, I release it with full knowingness that it is done, that right action is always taking place. And I am thrilled with it. And together we say, and so it is.